Now, if you are dealing with a narcissist, then that narcissist is probably driving you crazy, or actually maybe even feeling like insane. And you're thinking, is there any way to make them panic? Yes, there is. But first, let me just go through a couple of the things that they do to you, because it's important to understand that so that you can understand the flip side of it and what makes them panic. So a couple of their go-to things are things like gaslighting. Gaslighting is trying to make you think that you're crazy. And what they do is they'll say, oh, we talked about that, or don't you remember that, or no, that's not how that went, something like that. And shifting what they said, shifting what you guys talked about, shifting what you said, so that it meets their agenda, which is to manipulate you and to make you think that you're crazy. So gaslighting is definitely one of their favorite tactics. Another one of their favorite tactics is lying. They are total pathological liars. The crazy thing I think about narcissists is that they'll lie about stuff that they don't even need to lie about. You think to yourself, why are you lying about that? You don't even need to lie about that. But the thing is that narcissists think that they need to manipulate everything. They don't believe that they can get anything just in a normal way. They feel like they have to lie. So they will lie about even things that are readily verifiable, which is the thing that's pretty crazy. And in a lot of my other videos, I talk about making sure that you document everything that you do, because they will eventually contradict themselves. They will eventually put things in writing that are completely contradictory to what is actually happening or what they have said before. Now, they'll have some explanation for it, but that doesn't mean that you won't eventually be able to use it against them. Okay, so number two thing that they do on a very regular basis is lie. The third thing they try to do a lot of is intimidation tactics. So what I mean by that is that they will constantly try to make you be afraid. So they intimidate you in all sorts of ways. You're afraid that they're going to hurt you. They're afraid they're going to expose you. You're afraid that they're going to take your kids. They're very, very, very good at figuring out what your weaknesses are, what means the most to you. And that's what they'll go for. So if you're a mother and you don't want to lose your kids, they'll say, I'm taking the kids and you'll never see your kids again. If you are dependent upon this person for support, they'll say, I'm going to take everything and leave you in the street. If you want money from this person, then they'll use that against you. So whatever they can use against you, they will, and they'll scare you into thinking like, oh my God, my life is going to be so terrible if I cross this person. And there's all different types of intimidation tactics that they use. Some are more violent than others. If they're more of a malignant type of narcissist, some of them are a little bit more stealth if they're like a covert narcissist. But, all narcissists use the same kinds of tactics for the most part. Gaslighting is definitely one. Lying is definitely one as well. And intimidating you in some ways is one as well. And another thing that they often try to do is triangulate. This is where they get their flying monkeys involved, and they get you to believe that all these other people have lined up a side by side with them, supporting them. And if you cross this person or you come out and try to expose them in some way, then you're going to be the one that looks crazy, and you're going to be the one that looks insane, or you'll lose all your friends, because everybody believes that this person is absolutely wonderful. And so obviously you're the one that must be insane. So the term flying monkeys comes back from the Wizard of Oz, and it was when the Wicked Witch had her flying monkeys on her side. And that's what narcissists do. They all do it They all try to make you think that they're like so close to all these other people. And so therefore you shouldn't come out and try to say anything bad about this person because everybody else thinks this person is amazing. These are just a few of the things that they do. If this is all sounding all too familiar to you, go ahead and give me a totally in the comments. And if you are dealing with these things with the narcissist, which I'm sure you are, make sure you check out my video on self-care when coping with a narcissist. I will drop a link to that below. You want to make sure that you're taking care of yourself when you're dealing with a narcissist. I'm sure all these things sound really familiar to you, but in the end, okay, great. What can you do about it? So here's the not so secret about narcissists. That is that they are actually the most scaredy cats on the planet. They have no sense of inner value. I've often said they're like the chocolate Easter bunnies that are hollow inside. They have no sense of internal value whatsoever. So they've got to go and get all of their sense of value from the external. And that's what we call narcissist supply. It's in the form of compliments, money, prestige, you know, whatever it is that they can get to get attention for themselves on the external. But the thing is, they're super afraid. So if you push back on them enough, they will back down. So what causes a narcissist to panic, to feel stunned? Number one, brutal honesty. They expect, because they're pathological liars, that most people lie too. They really just expect that everybody else is just as bad as they are. They don't understand what it's like to be a normal person. They've never been one, so they don't get that. They don't get that people out there actually have integrity. They understand the concept of it, but they just really don't believe that anybody else has it. So if you're just brutally honest with them, it kind of stuns them and they're not exactly sure what to do with that. So for example, like if they, you know, a covert narcissist is all often sick. That's one of the things that they do. They have this whole shtick that they're unwell in some way, they can't work or whatever it is. You know, there's always some reason to feel sorry for the covert narcissist. And so, you know, if one day they're super sick and then the next day they show up at something fun, something that they want to actually be involved in, because of course they don't want to miss out on getting attention for themselves, you know, just without any kind of sarcasm or attitude or whatever, just say, oh, I'm so surprised that you're here. You know, you said you were so sick yesterday. And you have to be careful, because if you say with any kind of tone whatsoever, they're like super sensitive. They can, you know, they can sense it no matter what level of sarcasm it is. They'll feel it, they'll sense it, even if it's not there. They might think it's there. So just make sure you're really saying it like as if you're reporting the news. I always say, like, just the facts, ma'am, right? Just, oh, I'm surprised you're here. You know, you said you were so sick yesterday. They won't know what to do with that. So brutal honesty is number one. Okay, number two is pushing back. This is something that they don't expect, especially if you are used to giving in and acquiescing to whatever it is that they want. They will be really surprised, and it will make them panic if you push back against them. If they start to realize this person they thought they had total control over is no longer listening to everything that they do, or doing everything that they say, or buying into everything that they're selling, it will stun them, and it will start to panic them a little bit, because they'll be going, what's going on here? Why is this person pushing back against me? Something like that. Okay, so that's number two. Okay, and number three is exposing them. They do not want to be exposed for any reason whatsoever. If you really want to throw a narcissist into panic mode, let them think that they're going to be exposed, or actually expose them. If their flying monkeys find out who they really are, or if somebody that they respect gets to see some side of them that they don't want seen, then that's a really huge way to make a narcissist panic. So for example, in a mediation situation, if you know something about the narcissist that they don't want the other side to know. You might subtly say like that fact is going to come out. In my world, it could be that the person has a sexually transmitted disease and they are a doctor in the community. They probably don't want the world to know that. So, especially if they got it by cheating on you and everything else. So, sometimes, not going to court can be a huge motivator for a narcissist. It can really make them panic if they think that, the world is going to see things about them that they have taken painstaking efforts to hide and make sure nobody else knows. So, number 3 is exposing them. Okay, and number 4 is losing control in any way. So remember what we talked about, that they're the most scared people on the planet. They're really like the bullies, you know how in A Christmas Story, that old movie, that, the little boy fought back against the bully and then the bully ended up running away. You're really just figuring out what their level is. And they're doing the same thing to you, by the way. So every time you push back a little bit against them, they'll act up even more. They'll do more of their lying, more of their control tactics, more of their intimidation, more of their narcissistic rage. It will spurn them because they'll think, okay, I just need to clamp down a little bit harder against this person so that they'll behave and get back under my layer of control. Or they might start love bombing again and then devaluing, love bomb, devalue. They'll start, doing this campaign of love bombing again because they're trying to get you back into their layer of control. They're panicking. So losing control is something that really sends them into a tizzy. The reason they do all the things that they do, gaslighting, manipulation, lying, all the things that I talked about at the beginning of this video, is because they're trying to assert control over you because they are so insecure underneath. And the way that you can make them panic is by having them lose some of that control. And, just like if you have a 2-year-old that has a tantrum, they're conditioning the parents. It's like, okay, if I scream loud enough, if I have enough of a tantrum here, if I cry loud enough, then mommy and daddy will give me what I want. And if you give in as a parent to that child, then they'll know next time I just need to scream louder, I just need to scream longer, and eventually they'll give in to what I want. So what the narcissist is doing is trying to figure out at what level do I need to act at to get this person back into my layer of control. And if you give into that, then they know I just need to be that much louder, that much more awful next time in order to get this person to come back to my layer of control. So if you really want to make a narcissist panic, let them realize that you're no longer buying in to that stuff. When they start losing control, that's when they super panic. 6 ways to scare a narcissist out of your life. It's time to scare a narcissist out of your life. They usually have you running scared, right? Because that's what they want to do. They want to scare you. They want to intimidate you. They want you to be the one who's feeling nervous and scared all the time. Okay. Why do they do that? Because they get narcissistic supply from it, right? So the first thing that you can do is, number 1, not be intimidated by their behavior. Not be intimidated by their behavior. You know why? Because they're actually way more afraid of you than you are of them. That's the not so secret. They're the scared little person inside, and they don't want you to know it. So the minute that you're not intimidated by their behavior, they're like, hey, what's going on here? Because there's certain types of people that the narcissist respects. And I want you to check out my video. This is the only kind of person that a narcissist respects. Check out that video and you will see what I'm talking about. So number 1, don't be intimidated by their behavior, and you will start to see how things will shift. I know it's scary at first, You will see. And closely related is number 2. Start not giving in to their demands. When you start not giving into their demands, you're starting to shift the dynamic. You're starting to not be conditioned by them anymore. What happened was at the beginning of the relationship, they started conditioning you. They started to say, hey, here's how things work. They started to do things. They started love bombing you. They came along. They were perfect. They were wonderful. Rockets were going off. Things were lining up. They were soulmates to you, whether it was a business relationship, whether it was a personal relationship, either way. I was in a business relationship with a narcissist. It was the same thing. Everything was wonderful. Everything was perfect. Everything was amazing. And then they start devaluing you. Then they start doing things, whether it's a covert narcissist, whether it's a grandiose, it doesn't matter. They start doing these little things where you go, oh, what's going on? That's when they're starting to condition you. That's when they start going, oh, let's see how they do. Let's see what happens here, right? And when you start not giving into those demands, you're conditioning them back. That's when you start pivoting. That's when you start shifting that dynamic around. Don't give in to their demands. Number 3 is start putting boundaries into place. When you start putting those boundaries into place, again, you're starting to turn that ship around so that now you're starting to point the guns at them instead of having the guns be pointed at you. And I have a whole video called 5 Ways to Set Boundaries with Narcissists. You definitely want to check that out if you want to know how to set boundaries with narcissists. All right. I want you to put in the comments right now, not giving in, because that's what you're going to do right now. You are not giving in, right? You are changing how things are going to be. From now on, there's a new game in town. Another thing that you do with them is, this is number 4, you're going to focus on the facts. When you focus on the facts, they can't take that, especially when they're trying to gaslight you all the time. When they're constantly trying to go, this is what happened, no, this is what happened. And you go, I saw it with my own eyes. I heard it with my own ears. I know what happened. This is what happened. And you don't get emotional. And this is actually number 5. Withhold emotional reactions. Emotional regulation is key. You focus, number 4, focus on the facts. Number 5, do not get emotional. Don't allow yourself to be triggered. When you do that, you seriously start to scare them out of your life, because you are no longer allowing yourself to be triggered by them. And when you do that, that's when you're cutting off that supply source to them. And that's when you're really going to scare them out of your life. Because the bottom line is that food, that oxygen, that supply source, when that main line is still running toward them, that's when they're still going to be coming at you. That's when they still want you. And as long as they're getting some food source, that some oxygen, some supply source from you, they're still going to come around. If you're still intimidated, you're still fearful, you're still giving in, you're still allowing, that's giving them some reason to come around. Okay. And especially if you have an emotional reaction, that emotional reaction gives them supply. It also gives them fodder for things that they can use against you, especially if you have some kind of a legal case going on with them. They will use that against you. They will say, look, there's the crazy one. There's the one. While they sit over there all cool and calm and collected. They use that in text. They use that in emails. They use witnesses against you. Don't allow it. Okay? Go scream in your pillow. Go cry in the shower. Go talk to your therapist. You know, we actually have a partnership with BetterHelp.com. Go to BetterHelp.com /Rebecca Zung. If you need help and support, we do receive commissions from that, but we only recommend services that we trust. Whatever you need to do to not have an emotional reaction, do that. Okay? That's number 5. Number 6 is cut them off. Cut them off. Cut off that supply source completely if you can. And then don't allow it back if you can. Or if you have to have one form of communication, have it be email or some other way that you can track the time and date stamp. If you have children, then the apps are good, the ones that you can track, because you want a record of everything. You want something that you can track, because they will use it against you. They will manipulate things. 100% they will. Anything you say or do will be used against you. All right. I know you feel like they're constantly winning. And you're like, how are they getting away with this all the time? I know. I hear it all the time. I'm a lawyer and I constantly hear, how are they getting away with this? They always win. The system is broken. I'm going to give you 6 tactics for putting a narcissist in their place right now. So don't move. And in fact, I'm going to give you 6, and the best one is at the end. All right. So don't move. All right. Number 1, you got to call them out when things aren't adding up. I know it's scary. It's definitely scary, but they've been conditioning you from the beginning, and you got to start saying, like, things are changing. They got to know that there's a new game in town. So just little by little, you got to start saying, hey, that's not adding up. Even if it's in an email, even if it's in a text, even if it's in an app, if you're using an app, you just got to say, hey, that's not adding up. And you got to start putting that in documentation. And remember, every text, every email, everything that you put in writing is a potential trial exhibit. That's not adding up. So number 1, call them out when things aren't adding up. Going through 6 tactics for putting a narcissist in their place. And this is something that you want to start doing. So number 2 is, remember, you don't want to give them narcissistic supply, right? So number 2 is you don't react to their bait. They're going to throw that bait out there and they're going to be like trying to reel you in, use things against you. Remember, when you're dealing with a narcissist, it's like getting arrested. Everything they say or do is going to be used against you. They're going to try to use your emotional reactions against you. They're going to go, oh, look, there's the crazy one. Look, they're going to be sitting over there like all cool and calm and collected, like they're the normal one, because they're trying to get you to do things. They're trying to bait you, trigger you. So do not react to the bait. So hard, I know, but as soon as you do, they'll use it against you. So don't react. Number 3, the number 3 tactic for putting narcissists in their place is get them to lie and then flip it against them. You got to get them to lie. You got to bait them, right? So they're laying bait against you. Now you got to do the same thing back against them. And I have a whole video on what happens when you catch narcissists in lies. This is what you can do, right? This is, you want to nab them. So get them to lie and then flip it against them. I have a whole video on this. You want to nab them. I want you to put this in the comments right now. Nab them. All right. So get them to lie and flip it against them. This is tactics for putting narcissists in their place. You want to do this, right? So the next one is act like you don't care. You don't care. This is a step beyond not reacting to their bait. This is literally, you do not care what's going on with them. Like, okay, like, I don't even know your name. Who are you again? What? Do whatever you're going to do. Like, that is how you are. Okay? I don't even care what you're doing right now. That's the next one. Okay? 6 tactics for putting a narcissist in their place. They're trying to get supply from you. You are cutting off their food source, their oxygen. That is what supply is. That's number 4. Number 5 tactic for putting a narcissist in their place
is creating invincible leverage, right? Strategy, leverage, anticipate, focus on you. That is my SLAY methodology. That's what I teach. That's my program. You are creating invincible leverage. That is what you need to do. That is how you're going to put a narcissist in their place. Part of getting them to lie and flipping it against them. That's why you need to go watch that other video, right? But you're going to create invincible leverage. I actually have a whole video on how to create leverage too. You can definitely check that out as well. All kinds of free stuff on this channel. That's why you need to subscribe and hit that notification bell. All right. And number six is be offensive and not defensive. Offensive. Never defend yourself. Okay. I have a whole video on that too. Don't defend yourself. Don't do that. Because as soon as you defend, you're like giving them, you're saying there's an issue. Don't defend, be offensive. So that's number 6. You're going to have 10 phrases to shut down those narcissists. All right. So number one is, I can see that you are upset. I like this one because you're just observing to them. I also like this one because it also helps you to kind of divorce yourself from it, step away from it so that you can sort of breathe and put a little bit of space between you and that emotion so that you are just kind of like looking at it, you're just observing it as if you are now a third party observer. Like it's just something that you are seeing, but you're not actually engaging in it. And it's not really part of you. It's just something that you're watching. I can see that you are upset. I can see that this is something that you are angry about. I can see that maybe this is something that we need to talk about later when you are more calm. So it is a great way for you to also step back, but it is also a way to shut them down in that moment. So that's number 1. Number 2 is a way to take it so that they don't feel so like isolated, because narcissists don't want to feel called out. So number 2 is we can both work together on this. Now, I know what you're thinking. I don't want to work together with a narcissist on that. I know you don't want to, but all I'm saying is they don't want to feel called out. So sometimes you have to make them feel like we're all together and we're on the same side and we're doing this together, so that they don't feel like they're being called out. Even if you're not necessarily doing this, remember what I always say, ethically manipulating the manipulator. So even if you don't feel like it, sometimes you have to take your ego out of it, and you can say things like, we're working together on this, just so that they feel like they're not being called out on this. Okay, so that's number 2. We can both work together on this so they feel like it's a we instead of a you. Right, so that's number 2. Number 3 is I hear you. Hey, all people want to feel seen, heard, and know that they matter, but narcissists especially, what do they need more than anything? They want to feel like adulation, so sometimes you got to do what you got to do to give them that. And, I call it bartering. Sometimes you hear it because, being called like narcissistic fluffing. You got to fluff up their ego a little bit, like you're fluffing up a pillow. I always say you don't do this all the time. And you have to be doing this strategically, because I know some of you have given and given, like you got nothing left of yourself to give. So you have to make a choice where you're only doing this, where you're saying, I'm making a decision to do this because I'm going to do this right now in order to get something in return. So sometimes you need to say, I hear you in that moment, because you are going to get something in return at that moment as well. And this is especially true when you are in a negotiations setting, for sure. All right, so that's number 3. Number 4, I like this one too, because especially when the emotions get high and intense and red hot, how do you calm them down? You can say things like, I have no right to control how you see me. Okay, fine. You can say whatever you want about me. I have no right to control how you see me. You know, the old sticks and stones can break my bones. You can say whatever you want. I have no right to control how you see me. So you can say whatever. And it's great because they're starting to recognize at that point that you're not going to be moved by how they perceive you or the things that they say about you. You can say that I have no control how you see me or the things that you say. And that will kind of shut them down because they're starting to realize that they're not getting an emotional rise out of you, which is the thing that they want more than anything, because that's the payoff for them. When you get upset, that gives them narcissistic supply, and then that's the payoff that they want. Okay, so when you don't give them that, then they don't get that payoff. So that's number 4. Number 5, I'm not upset with you. Again, you're shutting them down because you're not giving them that supply. That is also a way to shut them down. Anytime you are cutting off that supply source, that's when you are starting to shut them down, because that's their food, that's their oxygen, that's their lifeblood. And they're always trying to say things to trigger you, to try to get that supply out of you, to try to get that rise out of you, to try to rile you up. If you want to know more about the kinds of things that they say, you can definitely check out my video called Narcissist Favorite Catchphrases, because there's a lot of things that they say to try to get you riled up. All right. Number 6 is your approach is not working for me. You know, the kinds of things that you're saying, the kinds of things that you're doing. If you're trying to get something from me here, if whatever it is that you're trying to get me to do, you know, it's not working for me. So, you know, you're not going to be getting what you want from me. So perhaps you might want to try a different approach. So that's number 6. Number 7 is, you can disagree with me, but you have no right to disrespect me. I like this. I used to have to say this kind of thing to opposing counsel sometimes when I was litigating on a regular basis. Like, we can disagree without being disagreeable. You can disagree with me, but we don't have to be disrespectful. We can disagree, but perhaps we just need to take this up with the judge. You know, I mean, I used to have to say this kind of thing to other lawyers. But, you know, when you're dealing with narcissists, they love to go low. They love to do the low blow thing. They love to make it personal right away. And it's up to you to set that standard, to set that bar, because they're not going to do it. You have to do it. I mean, you don't get your goals. You set your standards. You do. And, you know, they start treating you based on how you've allowed them. I mean, you know, they've conditioned you to a certain extent. And so you have to kind of recondition them based on how you're going to allow yourself to be treated. So just decide, you know, hey, you can disagree with me, but you don't have the right to disrespect me. So I want you to start right now by writing respect me in the comments below. That's where you're going to start. Number 8 is, what you are saying does not align with the facts. What you are saying does not align with the facts. I don't think I need to say anything more with that, right? You mean, sometimes they don't even necessarily care, because narcissists just lie. Sometimes they lie about things that are readily verifiable and things they don't even necessarily need to lie about, which is pretty crazy to me. Next one is, I agree with you. I love this one because you can even agree with things that aren't even necessarily where you're agreeing. Like, you can say, I agree with you that we are never going to agree. I agree with you that that's your opinion. I agree with you that that's what you think. I agree with you that that's what you believe. So that is number 9. And number 10 is goodbye. Number 10 is I'm walking away. Number 10 is see ya later or never. That's really the best one, honestly. I mean, when you can get to a point where you are not ever having to talk to this person ever again in your life and you can really shut them down completely, that's really the best, honestly. I mean, not everybody can get to that point. There are times in your life when you do have to continue to have this person in your life. I get that because of, children or family, or maybe, there is a business or there is, stuff that's going on in your life that it's impossible to completely walk away. Let's jump into it. 6 top lies all narcissists want you to believe. They think you're buying this stuff, right? They think you're buying it because they're so charming and they're so charismatic and they come on with their love bombing and they come on with their thing and they've got their lines and their stealth and their manipulation. They think that you're buying this stuff right from the beginning. We do. We do. I fell for it too. I did too. You know why? Because they're that good. They start figuring this stuff out at an early age. You know how that book, The Outliers by Malcolm Gladwell, where he talks about it takes 10,000 hours to become a master at something, to become really good at something. You know what 10,000 hours is? It's like 4 years. I mean, it's not like that long. Narcissists have been working on figuring out their craft since they were kids. This is survival for them. So they know how to read people. They're very good at this. But once you're onto them, you're onto them. So don't worry about that. I got you covered. And by the way, if you are negotiating with narcissists, you definitely want to grab my free Crush My Negotiation Prep Worksheet, free 15-page ebook at crushmydeal.com. Make sure you grab that, crushmydeal.com. I've had many thousands of people win their entire negotiations just on that, crushmydeal.com. Go grab that. So, number 1 top lie that all narcissists want you to believe: you can be vulnerable with me. You can share all your inner secrets with me. Tell me all your innermost secrets. Yeah, you can share them all with me. And guess what? Guess when you're going to hear them again? When they want to hurt you, you will be hearing them absolutely again. They're going to shift it all around. They're going to use them against you in court. They're going to use them against you in negotiations. They're going to tell whoever they want. They're going to throw them back in your face. They're going to say, you can't even do this. You can't even do that. You're so weak. You're this, you're that. Oh, 100%. I mean, because they have no conscience. That's the problem with you. You can be vulnerable with me. It's so sick and sad. That's what they'll do. Other people are like, I would never. I mean, I know I would never use somebody's most awful things against them. It wouldn't even occur to me. It would actually make me nauseous to even think about that, but they would do it. You don't even think about it. They do. I've seen it all the time in court. Oh my gosh. I've seen malignant narcissists turn around and actually file false pleadings against people, accuse people of being child molesters if they haven't been, accuse people of being wife beaters, child beaters, all sorts of things. They don't care sometimes, depending on the level of narcissism. They don't care. So you can be vulnerable with me. That's one of the lies that narcissists will tell you. They want you to believe. Number 2, you can count on me. Oh, yeah, sure. Narcissists hate you being needing them. That's like the last thing they want is for you to like actually want to count on them. They don't want to have to be there for you. They don't want you to like be sick around them. They don't want you to need them in any way, shape, or form. Because when you go back for some withdrawals on your deposits, you just doing things for them is just payment for being in their space. If you want anything back in return, then the payment is high. It may be like 1,000-fold for the most minuscule scrap. And then you'll hear about it for years on end that they actually did something for you. I mean, please. Yeah, you can count on me. Number 3, everything. One of the lies that they tell, we're going through the lies that all narcissists want you to believe. They want you to believe that everything in their life is your fault or your problem. All their problems or all the things that go wrong, all the failures, everything that bad that ever happened in the house or at the office or wherever it is that you have them in your environment or whatever is your fault. Everything is your fault. That's number 3. They project and deflect. They lie and deny. That is the number 1 agenda. Project and deflect, lie and deny. The 4 top agendas, depending on how you want to look at that. But it's just not them. And if you've seen any of these things so far, give me a totally in the comments. I'd love to see what you guys think. Give me a totally in the comments if you guys have seen any of these things so far. Number 4 of the top lies all narcissists want you to believe is I will change or I have changed. You're going to see everything is different. You know, this is the big old future fake. This is whether you're dealing with them at work or in a marriage or a relationship. You catch them in a situation or, you know, something happens and you go to marriage counseling, then everything is going to be different now, that sort of thing. I've changed, I will change, everything is different. I feel like it's almost like they're holding their breath, holding on tight for a period of time because it's like, how long do I have to engage in this charade until I can go back to being my normal self and let out my breath? And then once they do, hell hath no fury because they go right back to being the way they used to be and then worse because sometimes they want to make you pay. They're angry, resentful, and upset that you made them do these things that they didn't want to do in the first place. It's not even worth the I've changed, I will change little phase a lot of the time. So that's number 4. Number 5 lie all narcissists tell, they want you to believe is I would never lie. I would never lie. I cannot tell a lie. I'm the most truthful person you would ever meet. I have so much integrity. I would never lie. I tell the truth all the time. This is the person who tells the most lies of all people, constantly are catching them in lies. And, you know, the truth bears out. It bears out very quickly. You can tell if a person is a person of their word by how they behave, how they conduct themselves. Are they following through with what they say they're going to do? How does that happen? Did they say they were going to do something and then actually go through with it? You know, and you'll see, right? So that's number 5. And most of the time they don't. And that's when that becomes your leverage, by the way. That's a big piece of your leverage, which is a good thing. I know a lot of times people are like, oh, they lied and I hated that and they got away with it. How are they getting away with this? They don't get away with it because becomes your leverage. Every time I would see a narcissist lying, I'd be thinking, thank you. I get to use this against you now. Okay, so that's number 5. Number 6, no one loves you like I do. No one loves you like I do. This is such a huge lie. And they do this a lot of times to isolate you from family, to isolate you from friends. They don't want you to have other people in their lives. So they're jealous. They get upset. If you spend time with other people, they become resentful a lot of times, raging. If you spend time with other people, sometimes they even have tantrums if you spend time with other people, and it can be quite upsetting. Sometimes you even have to make choices. Now, you're dealing with a narcissist. This narcissist has been a nightmare for you, driving you crazy, making your life miserable, making you feel paralyzed, powerless, used, abused. I get it. I've been there. I've dealt with not 1, but 2 covert narcissists in my life. People close enough to me to drive me insane, make me crazy, gaslight me, take advantage of me, and step all over me. And yes, I'm a lawyer. Yes, I'm somebody who has, achieved a lot in my life, but that didn't mean that I couldn't be a target and a victim. It didn't mean that I can't become a survivor and thriver, which is what I've become. And now, since I've represented thousands of people who've dealt with narcissists in their divorces, I've also had to deal with them as opposing counsel or even deal with them as clients sometimes. And in my personal life, I've devoted my life to helping you with this nightmare because they are a nightmare. No doubt about it. They make your life a living hell. And so how can you turn those tables and actually make their lives a living hell? Make them crazy? Is it even possible? It absolutely is. This is a strategy. I have a whole course on how to negotiate with a narcissist. It's called Slay Your Negotiation with a Narcissist. And Slay actually stands for strategy, leverage, anticipate what the narcissist is going to do, and focus on you. So I would say the things that you want to do to make a narcissist miserable and become their worst nightmare is within the context of a strategy and within the context of developing leverage, because leverage is the thing that you're ultimately going to be using to squeeze and motivate that narcissist into doing what you want them to do and coming to reasonable conclusions so that you can actually resolve your issues with them. So yes, you can become a narcissist's worst nightmare, but I highly recommend you use it as part of a strategy and then ultimately get out of the relationship if you can. What's the number one thing that you can start with? You got to hit them where it hurts. And where is that for a narcissist? It's all about their supply source. So for a narcissist, they live on supply. Supply is their oxygen, it's their food, it's their lifeblood. Supply is anything that feeds their ego. So yes, they can get supply from the normal things that feed people's egos, like having a prestigious job, having lots of money, having the right car, the right house, the right wife, the right husband, living in the right neighborhood, and on and on and on. Okay, so yes, all of those things can give a narcissist supply. But what most people don't realize is that narcissists also get supply from jerking people around, from devaluing them, from treating them poorly, from cutting them down, from acting like they're better. All of those things also is a form of supply for the narcissist. So the trick in hurting them and becoming their worst nightmare is figuring out what source of supply you can interrupt, or you can threaten to interrupt, or you can threaten to take away. And so what is that for a narcissist? Most of the time for a narcissist, it's going to be all wrapped up in how they look to the community, how they look to the world, how they look to people they respect. Maybe it's a judge, maybe it's their lawyer, maybe it's other people in their world, like their boss or their clients or friends or people in the neighborhood or people on the same board that they are, or whatever it is. But they really want to make sure that they look good. Interrupting or threatening to interrupt, even better is to threaten to take it away, because that's where that leverage point is. That's where you're kind of riding that line of, you know, the leverage. Because once it's already gone, then it's gone. So it's even better for them if you can threaten that supply source. Number 2 is demonstrate their lack of control over something, because obviously narcissists want to have control over everything. So if you let them know that you're no longer controlling them, you're no longer controlling another person, you're no longer controlling a situation, then that will drive them absolutely insane. That's when you'll see the love bombing start back up again, the hoovering back in. You know, as a divorce attorney, you know, when somebody hires me who is married to a narcissist, that's when you'll start to see the narcissist go, oh, that lawyer is only out for money, that lawyer's not very good, that lawyer's not the one for you, you know, whatever, because they're going to try to figure out how to get that person away from the person who is now potentially has control over them, instead of the narcissist having control over that person. So, you know, figuring out what they really want to have control over, and then letting them realize, oh, you don't have control over this particular thing anymore. So that's another really good way of becoming a nightmare to a narcissist. And if you are so ready to turn the tables on that narcissist in the way that they've done to you, give me a turn the tables in the comments. Number 3 is one of my favorites, which is live a happy and successful life without them. That'll drive them absolutely insane. How are they living without me? How are they doing this? So you just move on, and the best way to do it is just completely erase them from your life, from your brain, like as if you went into the hard drive and just of your life and just took that whole section out and move on. You don't even think about them. You take them off your social media. You take them off of your email list, block them from your phone. That's what I had to do with the narcissist in my life so that I could just move on. And guess what? Live your happy and successful life, but live it without even thinking about, geez, I'm going to be making that narcissist crazy by living this happy and successful life, because then you still are like giving them energy, and you know, you don't want to continue to attract that person into your life. So the best way is just to actually move on, and that will drive them crazy, by the way. So you will become a nightmare because you escaped. So they'll have to move on to some other form of supply, and good riddance. If you are able to cut off their source of supply, show them they can't control you anymore, and live a happy and successful life without them, that's the trifecta. Now you've totally become the narcissist's worst nightmare, and the biggest bonus is you get to move on and you get to have your own life back. Even better than being the narcissist's worst nightmare is you having your life back. Now, if you're dealing with a narcissist, you may have learned all about the different phases of a narcissistic relationship, including love bombing, devaluing, and discarding. And if you want to know more about that, you can definitely check out my videos on those. But basically, when you're dealing with a narcissist, you're dealing with a person who has no sense of self. They're really just almost like a shell. And a lot of what they do is wrapped around trying to cover up the fact that they have no sense of self. And I'm not saying that they don't have inherent value as human beings, as souls on this planet. I'm saying that they don't feel like they do. And so because of that, they treat other people badly. They live in a world of scarcity. Like if they don't get before anybody else, that they're not going to have it. They're in a world of survival all the time. So
how that manifests itself is how they treat other people is just horribly, because they just feel like if they reach out at all, if they give at all, then they won't get that. Somehow their own whole world will not be right, that they'll start to collapse. And so how that collapse starts to happen for them is when they start to see things unraveling. So narcissists live on something called narcissistic supply. And if you haven't checked out my series, the Narcissism 101 series, check that out, because in that series, I go through all of the basic terminology, the kind of basic information that you need to understand how narcissists work. And while I am an attorney and my role here is to help you negotiate with these people and also create strategy and leverage and all of that, if you don't understand the basics of a narcissistic personality, you'll never be able to understand how to do those things. So understanding the basic terminology and the basic understanding of their brain is absolutely essential. So talking about how they act in a time of collapse is going to be important, but leading up to what happened, how does that collapse happen, is also going to be really, really important. So when you're dealing with a narcissist, you're dealing with a person who spends their entire lives trying to cover up things, trying to put on this show that is basically trying to be a masquerade so that people don't see what's really going on underneath that shell. And, you know, and they're also constantly trying to grab everything they possibly can to make themselves feel better, look better, feel more important, look more superior to others. And that's why they spend most of their day going around treating people badly, judging people, putting people down. And the only reason why they're ever nice to somebody is because they're constantly trying to manipulate people into getting under their web of control, because then that makes them feel better. I mean, I once heard that narcissists are like rats in a maze. They're just after that one thing, that one piece of cheese, that one, you know, that's the only thing that they're looking for. And the way I look at it is, you know, narcissistic supply is the only thing that drives them, and they get supply from money and adulation and respect and all of those kinds of things. But most of the time they go around getting narcissistic supply from the darker underbelly of narcissistic supply, which is treating people poorly, intimidation tactics, sometimes even violence, you know, control tactics, gaslighting, triangulation, flying monkeys, smear campaigns, all of those sorts of things. And so when it's this constant house of cards that they are keeping constructed, and it's actually a very fragile house of cards. Keeping that house of cards intact is like so much work. That's basically all that they spend their time doing, trying to be sure that they're never exposed, that no one will ever see that side of them that they don't want people to see. And if this all sounds super familiar to you so far, give me a totally in the comments. Okay, so now the house of cards is coming apart. It's all falling down around them. What does that mean for a narcissist? It means that they've been exposed in some way. It means that somebody has shown them up, you know, stripped away whatever leverage they thought they had. It means that something has unraveled for them and they're actually being exposed. They lose their ability to control themselves. And I've really seen this when people are negotiating with narcissists. And this is what I teach people. It's, you know, about the strategy and the leverage in my Slay program. But And I always tell people that they're the worst before they're actually ready to give up, because this is when they realize that that mask has been taken off, that filter is gone. So they start to lose control. You start to see them doing things that seem erratic or impulsive. They start to make mistakes. They start to fire off emails or text messages or things that are actually going to end up being really great trial exhibits against them. And that's when you start to know that they're starting to lose control. They're starting to be nervous about what's going to happen. The second thing that might happen is they actually have a complete meltdown. I mean, maybe you start seeing crying, crazy behavior, bizarre behavior, where they don't seem like themselves. They normally seem completely in control, and now they're desperate. They're begging. They're acting like they'll do anything. So that's the second thing that you might see. The third thing that you might see is hoovering. Now is when they're going to start to come back and go, oh, wait a minute, we can always work this out. We know, you know that we always could, you know, something like that. And if you want to know more about what hoovering is, check out my video on hoovering. But that's the next thing that you might see is like, okay, none of these things, crying didn't work, you know, coming apart at the seams, all of those things where they just completely have lost control. So let me try something else. You start to see them acting very, very desperately. And the last thing is that they start to panic, and you start to see fear and horror in their eyes. And if you want to know more about what makes a narcissist panic, check out my video on how to make a narcissist panic. But the basic thing you need to understand is that when you trigger that narcissistic injury, that narcissistic rage comes flying out. And when that happens, it's because they're starting to lose control. They're starting to collapse. And so they start acting very, very bizarrely during a collapse.
All right, so let's talk about ways to defeat that narcissist, or the signs that you have defeated that narcissist. Actually, like, okay, you're negotiating with them and you're trying to figure out like how it's going. Are you close? Have you defeated them? Do you think that you're kind of on the way to defeating them? Because sometimes it's maybe hard to tell because they don't want you to know. Obviously, I mean, they want it to look like they're winning at all costs and at all times, and they're never going to let on. I mean, even if they're like losing badly and things aren't going their way, and you're like showing them evidence that things aren't going their way, they're still going to say, I'm winning, it's going my way. It totally is. I mean, because that's how they've gotten along in life all along. You know, you can show them, hey, you know, look, these text messages show that you've been cheating. And nope, that's not what that says. That's how they get along. And I mean, I was actually just talking to one of my private clients recently, and she was telling me that she really appreciated one of my recent videos, which was 4 signs that the narcissist is losing control, which you can check out yourself if you'd like. And she said she loved that video because she was like, okay, like a lot of times, you know, she was saying, I'm afraid, I don't want them to lose control. I'm afraid of doing things that are going to make them lose control. And I don't want that to happen. But actually, she could see that that meant that she was starting to get there, that she was starting to make headway, that she was starting to cover ground, that she was getting closer to her goal of where she wanted to be. So that it was actually okay that in this case, she was dealing with a husband, but you know, sometimes you're dealing with a business partner. I've actually dealt with quite a few situations where people are dealing with maybe a family member in a probate situation, something like that. But it's okay if they're actually starting to lose control, because that means that they are showing signs of being defeated as well. And so you don't necessarily need to fear that. And also remember that they have conditioned you. They have conditioned you to believe that they are winners, that you don't know what you're doing, that you don't know how to think, that they do, that they're smarter, that you can't trust your thoughts, that you can only trust what they think. They've really conditioned you to believe that. And a lot of times, you know, your thoughts, things that you think are actually your thoughts, are actually thoughts that they have conditioned you to believe. Okay. So 6 signs that you're starting to defeat that narcissist. Number 1 is they're going to start love bombing you again. They're going to start coming back. So, you know, what happens is they start going back to that well of things that worked for them in the past. You know, they don't have a whole lot of tricks in their arsenal. They have their things that worked for them. So they go back to whatever it was that worked for them in the past. I mean, they have these patterns, they have these playbooks that worked. And that's why, you know, it's kind of interesting. I mean, you know, when you start to study what they're like, they're pretty predictable in the sense that you kind of can tell how they're going to behave, even though it's pretty awful, but you can pretty much tell how they're going to behave. So they'll start off kind of small, you know, and then they'll kind of work up to the things that, you know, when it's really bad defeat. Okay. So, you know, the love bombing might be the first kind of sign. Then the next thing is, okay, that didn't work. So let me go to the next thing. And that's when they start to get a little bit more desperate. So they start to flood you. They start to flood you with the text messages, show up at your house, show up at your office. You might start to see some crazy texts at this point. You might start to see some, you know, little undertones of not so nice texts, or maybe some even like threatening sort of language in the communications that you're receiving. So that, you know, it's starting to ramp up just slightly. You know, you're starting to feel that heat rise because they're starting to feel, you know, like it's coming. All right. So that's number 2. Number 3 is they start saying and doing all sorts of weird things. Like, this is where you start to see, like, where they kind of start to get like a little bit desperate, where they start to, you know, get a little bit crazy. And so sometimes you'll start to see them just say weird things like, okay, where did that come from? Okay. They get a little bit outlandish sometimes. And so that's, you know, how it kind of starts. Like they get a little bit crazier and crazier. And until they're just, you know, full crazy and into collapse, and they've just become undone. And, you know, by the way, the mini series with Hugh Grant and doing great example of that whole thing. And I actually did a whole video on that if you want to check it out. Really great example of that whole thing. And so, okay, so those first 3 are all about them. It's all about the narcissist themselves. And so those are all signs that you've defeated the narcissist, and that's about the narcissists themselves. So the last 3 I want to kind of focus on, signs you've defeated the narcissist. I want to focus on you, signs that you've defeated the narcissist, but focusing on you, because that's really when you know that you've defeated the narcissist, because you feel it on this side of the fence. All right. So number 4 is, you know that you've defeated the narcissist because you're no longer emotionally triggered. It's like they say things that normally in the past would have gotten you all like upset. It's like, you know, Superman with the bullets that just pop off your chest, or Wonder Woman, they just like went right off your wrist, and you're like, did somebody say something? I thought I heard something, but nothing. I got nothing. It didn't even like faze me at all. Nothing. Like when you're not emotionally triggered by that at all, you know you've actually defeated the narcissist. Okay. That's number 4. Number 5 is you get what you want. You get what you want in the negotiation, but you've taken your ego out of it. What do I mean by that? that means that you've ethically manipulated the manipulator. They think they've gotten away with something. You've let them on to believe that they won, that they got something out of you, and you actually manipulated them into taking exactly what you wanted them to take. So, and you do your best Meryl Streep or Al Pacino or whatever it is, and you went, oh my God, I can't believe, oh, this is all terrible, you know, whatever. And because you took your ego out of it, because you know what, they have to feel like they won. And that's how it goes. It's okay. It's fine. That's going to be how it is. You know, you have to let them think it's their idea or whatever it is. Okay, so that's number 5. Number 6, the last one is, this is the best one, really. And that is, you no longer have any fear. You no longer have any fear in interacting with them whatsoever. Not only it's no emotion, you have no fear in interacting with them. You receive emails from them, you see them, you talk to them, you have no fear. And I get so many emails from people who've done my programs, who've watched my videos, all the things that I've told you guys to do. And then you tell me that that's the miracle. Yeah, you've gotten the outcomes you wanted, all those things. But the miracle is that the fear has disappeared.